US market presents unique challenges for Huawei. And while the Huawei Mate 10 Pro will not be sold by US carriers, we remain committed to this market now and in the future.
So let's go back to our guests, Craig Copetas in Paris and Max Wolff in New York. Max, look, is this another case of protectionism by the US, or are there some genuine security concerns with the Huawei phones?
This is a great question. I think the answer is both, right? So telecom equipment is quite sensitive for a host of reasons. If nothing else, it's a favorite sort of ploy of various intelligence gathering efforts. And I think Huawei has had some particular difficulties. They have a bit of a rocky history with U.S. authorities. But it's also true that the U.S. has sort of taken the world down a path of more narrow, nationalistic, more hostile to trade, more fearful than embracing of opportunities around the world. And that has permeated the culture and the decision-making, making it harder to do cross-border deals. So I do think this is both an exemplar of both sides here. So there are some real concerns, and there is some real nationalist narrow thinking here too. Right.
Craig, what's your response to that? Protectionism or some genuine concerns there?
This is an interesting evening. I'm in complete agreement with Max all night tonight on this. Yeah, he's right. And but there are serious espionage issues with this phone. Okay, and all Chinese investments in the United States. Let me bring it back to this World Bank thing again, because the United States has veto power at the World Bank. It's the only country that does. And what you're going to see happening in Davos, which last year belonged to the president of China, this year is going to belong to Trump, is he is going to start leveraging control of the World Bank. He wants the World Bank back on the stage as a tool in his toolbox in the White House for this global trickle-down that he hopes to take place. Now, all of the usual suspects, from former World Bank boss, Robert Zelnick on down, just don't like what he's doing. In fact, in today's Wall Street Journal, Bob wrote an article that said that Trump could plunge the world into what he termed economic mayhem by these kinds of policies that he's enacting right now. But Trump will not pay any attention to this because he believes, Trump, that he can beat China at its own game. Because at the end of the day, Trump's people believe the world would rather have American products than Chinese products, and would certainly rather do business with America, which is a free market democracy, than China, which is controlled by the Communist Party.
Interesting point.
Simplicity, yes, but that's how the man thinks.
Right. Max, from an investor's point of view, does it matter that China is not a free market democracy? I mean, just looking at some statistics, Beijing estimates that about 40% of its sales to the US are generated by American companies operating in China. That's from economist Michael Ivanovich. Does that make Trump's claims that it doesn't get a fair deal with China pretty dubious, to say the least?
Look, I don't think President Trump or that many other business leaders would prefer to go with a non-democratic counterparty, but I also don't think they care very much. And if you look at Trump's history of overseas operations, it's hard to figure out any way, with no matter how much flexibility or gymnastics you'd use, to say he was looking for places that were democratic to do business. I think the profit margin, the ease, the warmth, the friendliness to business is a big deal. And I think the Trump administration and their team has some very aggressive ideas. And I think to see them as very successful, you have to assume that they'll be very aggressive and other people will kind of sit back and watch. And I think while that's worked sometimes with domestic political opponents in the US, I don't think that's how competitive global markets tend to work. And democratic or not, global markets are competitive. There's lots of overcapacity. And we think that nationalist impulses from one country that risk beggar thy neighbor policies will unfortunately beget further policies when they get a nasty response. And I think we'll see that, but it is possible that we're going to try to make some kind of 1960s era Made in America roadshow out of Davos. I'm not sure.
Yeah, so, last year Xi Jinping went to Davos and he was crowned Davos man. Is Donald Trump trying to steal that thunder away from Xi Jinping, do you think, Max?
You can
probably. I mean, I think he always wants the kudos and the camera. And I think that's a good observation.
That's about all the time we have. Craig Copetas in Paris and Max Wolff in New York. Thank you both so much.